Oh my gosh. Wow, that's pretty impressive. Oh, hey, fourth graders, welcome back. Mrs. Lawson here, and I'm so excited you're here to read with me today. Guys, we finished lunch money. Can you believe it? I cannot believe it. But today we are going to start a new story with a character named Max. His name is actually Max Malone, and it's about him trying to make some money. It's called Max Malone Makes a Million. It says it is by Charlotte Herman and illustrated by Kat Bowman Smith. So we are just going to start this story today. Our learning intentions are we are learning how to pick out the details and examples authors use to develop characters and events in a narrative. So we know we are successful when we can identify the main characters, find details in the text that describe the characters' actions, thoughts, and words. So for our vocabulary, we are looking at this word right here. Can you sound it out? Good job. It is fortune, and look at all that money. It says one of my favorite shows is Wheel of Fortune because contestants can win lots of money. So what does fortune mean, fourth graders? Yeah, good job. It is a large amount of money. What about this word? Victory. And we have Michael Jordan here raising his arms in victory. Oh, just like the sentence says, Michael Jordan waves his hands in victory when he made the game-winning shot. So what does victory mean? Good job, fourth graders. It's an act of defeating an enemy or an opponent in a battle, game, or another competition. So in this case, it's just a game. So for our foundational skill, we are continuing to work with suffixes. The suffix shun can change a verb to a noun. So what is the base word in this word? We take that suffix off. Imagine, good job. What does imagination mean? Yeah, those are some great ideas, fourth graders. The act of imagining. Let's try another one. What about this word? What is the base word if we took that suffix off? Subtract. Good job. What does subtraction mean? The act of subtracting. Great job. So today you are going to be reading a short little piece about sushi, one of Miss Lawson's favorite foods. So if you have never had sushi, you might expect it to be kind of gross. Raw fish, seaweed, ew. So here's a picture of what it looks like. So you're going to work with those shun words and see what you learn about sushi today. Okay, so here is our main character, Max, and I can't wait to see what he is up to. In the chips, Max Malone was lying on the living room floor. He was reading the Sunday comics and laughing at the latest adventures of Garfield. So if you guys didn't realize, I was reading a newspaper at the beginning because that's what he's doing. The comics are in the newspaper. His sister Rosalie was working on a crossword puzzle at the dining room table. Does anyone know a 5-letter word that ends in T and means silent? Quiet, Max ordered. I'm trying to read. Quiet, that's it. Thanks, Max. Mrs. Malone was on the couch reading the other parts of the paper. She especially liked the human interest stories. Those were the stories about dogs who saved entire families from burning buildings, or firemen who rescued cats from trees. Now this is interesting, said Mrs. Malone. A 10-year-old boy made a fortune selling chocolate chip cookies. Max looked up from the comics and listened as his mother read. 10-year-old in the chips. 10-year-old Anthony Baker of Portland, Oregon doesn't have to steal cookies from the cookie jar. He puts them there. And judging by the number of cookies he's baked using his own original recipe, he's been filling lots of cookie jars. Ooh, so we've got a picture. Here's the mom Max and Rosalie. All right, it says Anthony doesn't know exactly how many cookies he's baked so far. He's not counting. He is too busy counting the money he's making. So we're going to stop because we have a focus question. What is Max's plan? So just by reading that question first, I realized Max is about to make a plan. And we have to figure out that this plan tells us something about Max. Let me see that, said Max, jumping to his feet. He hurried over to the couch and sat down next to his mother. She handed him the paper and he began reading silently. He interrupted himself with lots of wows and oh boys. Wow. All he did was buy an old stove and he rented an old shack in his neighborhood where he baked and sold cookies. Max continued to read to himself until he came to the last line. Oh boy, listen to what it says here. This young man may well be on his way to becoming a millionaire. Max tossed the newspaper onto the couch. Wow, a millionaire? Just by baking and selling chocolate chip cookies? I could do that. He had watched his mother bake cookies lots of time. There was nothing to it. I could get an old stove and rent a shack somewhere. There aren't any shacks around here, Rosalie informed him. Max thought this over. Rosalie was right. He couldn't remember seeing any shacks in his neighborhood. Then I'll just use our kitchen. We've got an old stove. He ran into the kitchen to check out the stove. Rosalie followed him. Max opened and closed the oven door and worked the control knob a couple of times. All right, so let's pause here for a second, see if you can figure out what is Max's plan. So hopefully you see that his plan down here is right here. I could get an old stove and rent a shack somewhere. Does that work out for him? No, his sister says there aren't any shacks around here. So what did that plan tell us about Max? Right, he doesn't think things through. He's just like, let's do it. And there's not a plan that's all the way thought out. So a focus question for this page is, why is Mrs. Malone wary of Max's plan? So she's nervous about his plan. Gotta figure out why. So why does she give in to Max's plan? Oh, so we kind of got a little spoiler alert. So she is gonna let him do his plan, but let's see what happens. This stove should work out even better. I already know how to use it. All I have to do is get Gordy to help me. I'll help you too, said Rosalie. You'll need all the help you can get. That's just what Max didn't need, Rosalie's help. She loved to eat anything that was sweet. She could eat tons of sugared cereal and never get tired of it. He could just imagine what she'd do with his cookies. No thanks, said Max. You'd eat them faster than we could bake them. I'm not sure about this cookie business of yours, said Mrs. Malone, coming into the kitchen to pour herself a cup of coffee. I don't like the idea of you fooling around with the stove. And the mess. Come on, Mom. What if Anthony Baker's mother told him not to fool around with the stove and worry about making a mess? He never would have made his fortune. Mrs. Malone leaned against the counter, took a sip of coffee, and sighed deeply. Oh, well, I guess I ought to let you give it a try. 20 years from now, I don't want you to come to me and tell me that I kept you from becoming a millionaire. Just be careful. With an air of victory, Max raised his arms and shook his fist the way he had seen athletes in the Olympics do. All right, just you wait and see, Mom. We'll make so much money you won't have to sell any more memo pads. Mrs. Malone sold personal memo pads through the mail. So let's see if you can figure out these questions. Why does she give in to Max's plan? What details show she's still not sure? So hopefully you paused your video and went back and looked for some details. So why is Mrs. Malone wary of his plan? So if we go back up here, she says, I'm not so sure about this cookie business. Why? Yeah, she doesn't want him messing with the stove and she doesn't want a mess. Then he's like, please, Mom. He's kind of like begging her. And she sighs deeply, which kind of shows she's still not sure. She's like, okay, I guess. So she kind of shows she's still not sure, right? And she goes, I ought to give it a try. She doesn't want him to come to her and tell her that she kept him from becoming a millionaire. So she's scared that if she says no, Max is going to be upset with her. So that's why she gives in, right? I'd better go call Gordy, said Max, running to the phone. Max punched in Gordy's numbers and waited for someone to answer. He hoped it wouldn't be Gordy's mother or father. He hated talking to parents on the phone and having to be polite. Luckily, it was Gordy who finally answered, and Max didn't waste any time on small talk. He got straight to the point. Gordy, get over here right away. You, pal, are about to make your fortune. So, we know that authors don't just tell readers about characters. They show us what they're like by revealing their thoughts, their words, and their deeds or their actions. So let's look at Max. We know that today he really develops his plan for his business. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig a little deeper. We're going to look at his actions, words, and thoughts. So first, let's look at his actions. So what does he do on this page that is an action? I'll pause it for you to see if you can find it without me. Hopefully you read all the way down to the bottom because that's where the answer is. It says, then I'll just use our kitchen. We've got an old stove. He ran into the kitchen to check out the stove. Rosalie followed him. Max opened and closed the oven door and worked the control knob a couple of times. So he went to check the stove by opening and closing the door and working the control knob. That's an action. It's something he did. Then let's look for some thoughts. What is something that he's thinking? So this one's kind of more up at the top. He says right here, that's just what Max didn't need, Rosalie's help. She loved to eat anything that was sweet. She could eat tons of sugared cereal and never get tired of it. He could just imagine what she'd do with his cookies. No thanks, you'd eat them faster than we could bake them. So he's thinking, man, I do not want Rosalie's help. And the reason why is she loves sweet things and she's going to eat all their cookies. Now we got to look back at his words. So the first thing is right here where they're talking about the stove because they're in quotation marks. So we know that he said it. He said, this stove should work out even better. I already know how to use it. So that's showing us he's thinking through that plan now. So earlier when he talked about the shack, he wasn't really thinking that clearly, but now he's like, oh, yeah, I'll use this stove I already know. So this stove should work out even better. All I have to do is get Gordy to help me. So that shows he doesn't want Rosalie's help, but he does have a plan and he is going to go get with Gordy. So just his thoughts, his words, and his actions show us how he develops his plan for his cookie business. So what details help to introduce the characters of Max and his family? So that was in that beginning scene when they were all in this living room together. So what do we learn about his family? So the big details here is what part of the newspaper are they working on? So we know that at the beginning it talks about Rosalie. She's working on the crossword puzzle. Then we have Max. He is trying to read, right? And then he's working on the comics section. Then we have Mrs. Malone. She's reading human interest stories. So she likes those stories that make her feel better, those happy stories. And then we also get this nice picture of what they all look like. So that's helpful too. Then we kind of learn a little bit about Max from when he says, I don't want Rosalie's help, right? That's showing he does not want to work with his sister. So there's just a few details that help us figure out about his family. So now it's your turn, fourth graders. You have rocked it today. Great job. So what you are going to do on your own for this reading response is, whose help does Max plan to get? Whose help does Max reject? And why does he reject that? We've gone over it a few times, so you guys should do amazing. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for coming to read with me. Bye.